Hi, Srdjan. Thank you very much for doing the interview with me, doing the raw interview. And so I'm just going to try and introduce you a little bit, so you can correct me if I'm making a mistake. So you're an architect. You're a professor of architecture. You were teaching at Harvard. You were teaching at CUNY. You were teaching at Penn State. Where else?
It's not Penn State. It's Penn.
Penn, sorry. And you studied under Rem Koolhaas, or you worked with you studied with under Rem Koolhaas, and you were head of research for Herzog and Meuron. Is that correct? Okay. And I remember that you did a project with Ai Weiwei, whom I like a lot. Is that correct? Did I remember?
Which project?
I think you did a house with Ai Weiwei that has steps and green stuff.
Oh yeah, sure. With Ai Weiwei.
Okay, so I remember that. I like that one. You showed it to me. I don't know if that's public, but I know about it. So
it's public. It's been published.
Okay, cool, awesome. And so what is your interest in architecture? What's your interest in architecture? What do you focus on?
Well, my interest is really in research. Research. That's basically my title after my doctorate, research architect. What does that mean? I mean, that doesn't mean that other architects are not researchers. Everybody has to do some research. Okay. But, this something that my group from Goldsmiths College, where I have a PhD, and from Forensic Architecture Group, calls it investigative aesthetics.
Okay.
So that there is aesthetics to it. And which, in some circles that, gets to some criticism, but that's fine, like criticism is good. And because you learn a lot. And now, now I'm actually working on two things. I mentioned to you that I have this artist in residence and grant in Potsdam, Institute for Climate, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll be working with scientists on artificial climate. That's basically the focus I want to do. I'm talking to a friend that you also know, Mitchell Joachim.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about whether there are some biological ways to regulate climate.
Okay.
So he's on it. He's from MIT. These guys are totally.
Yeah, but climate is already regulated, meaning we are influencing climate. Meaning
that's my point.
Yeah. So we want to just change the way we're influencing it. Yeah.
It's exactly true, Nicola. That is my point, and I guess that's why they liked it. They went for it.
Yeah.
So
that makes a lot of sense because the current climate is artificial climate. We are living in artificial climate, as far as I understand the research. Yeah.
Exactly. If you live like near the equator or below the equator, there are different strategies and ways how to do it. How to regulate it or even make it artificially, as I call it, better than climate.
I like that idea of artificial climate. That's a very cool.
Yeah.
That's a very cool. Like artificial intelligence. That's a very cool. Did you come up with that name?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great name.
Yes, I have some work done. I mean, I published on it already.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it was kind of a logical. It took me like 20 minutes to write a proposal. It was easy.
Yeah. So you should make sure to buy a .com domain name artificial climate if it's not taken before I publish this. You have when we finish, you have 20 minutes to buy.
I'll take that advice. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I mean that's very interesting. Yeah, and so how can architecture influence the change of climate?
Oh, it can a lot. I mean, first of all, as you mentioned the word regulations, at least here in New York City, there are a lot of regulations and, they're kind of manipulated. You have a lot of corporate offices that, call their buildings green buildings or, zero carbon and all that kind of stuff. And they get diplomas on that. But in fact, you know, they're uber rich, and they're mostly condominiums, and you know, so you doubt, you know, whether this is actually really true. Then there's a second move which comes from Germany, actually, which is called the passive house, meaning having no heating and no air conditioning, but it's totally sealed. So
I just turned off my aircon. Sorry, under the name.
my aircon is on. Should I turn it off?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on your conscience.
No, it's not possible without.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
So then, you know, the idea of the passive house, and they're now trying it in upstate New York, is that, you know, you have all these like needles going down to the ground and picking up both cool and hot, and then so you don't have any machinery. The only issue is that you live like in a fishbowl. Mm-hmm. You can't open anything, right? And so, you know, people are doing investigation on that. If we talk about climate, man-made climate, there is also there is a lot of really interesting work coming up, at least for my generation, that were also with Ai Weiwei in Inner Mongolia, right? Like offices like An Architects. They're doing stuff for institutions now, and they're using clay, and they're kind of covering it with some other material. They're really materially completely conscious and really precise. And there is another office, Soil, SO-IL. You know, they're getting really important commissions now for museums and schools. Yeah, and then work AC, and then Wood and Malandros, you know, getting stuff for this edible gardens. So there is a lot of that kind of mid-ground happening at the moment. I mean, of course, you have these billionaires, you know, that completely have no stop. You know, and you know, they sell apartments to Russians, to Arabs, and nobody lives there. So, yeah. And then they turn on artificial lights, you know, so it looks like somebody's there.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is a lot of that kind of masquerade, but I mean, there is a lot of new important work, you know, on this kind of much smaller scale, but much more social scale.
Yeah. I just want to clarify, we have to be careful not to say Russians and Arabs. I think rich people who want to maybe use money somehow specifically from those countries.
Okay, all right.
Most likely not the majority of Russian and Arabic people, you know.
Okay, I get it. Okay.
You agree with that, yes?
Yeah.
Because I know colloquially we all tend to say Italians, Americans, you know, stuff. But I think it's good to be very correct with those things when we publish a video.
Okay, all right, no problem.
As a PR person, ex-PR,
I understand.
PR, I have to be, yeah.
I respect it.
Cool.
So, and then, you know, what else is happening? There is a lot of changes in urban design. I'm just talking about New York at the moment. As you know, there are, I think now almost every street has a bike lane, and the cars are being parked in the middle of the street instead of on the side. There is a lot of work going on that. A friend of mine is working in the city planning office, and you know, they keep track on that, on safety, and especially bicycles, because I think statistics was that there are like 180 bicycle deaths a year, and that's decreasing, because now there is a special lane, and so there's a lot of work happening on that. Urban planning, urban design.
Yeah, but just I mean, how much of that is signaling, you know, pretending that it's a change, and how much of it is a real change? Like, in your knowledge, if the best possible thing without any political restraints.
Well, you know, the bike lanes are really big.
That's a really big change. Yeah.
That's a huge, and it's physical. You know, it's. Yeah. I have a bike lane in front of my house, so you know, I know that I don't step on it. You know.
Yeah.
So and now
But
you
for
have
example, New York had regulation to increase the number of green roofs, and they had a lot of support for that. But
yeah,
I didn't see that happening. Is that happening? Do people care? No?
happening with certain investors, and it's not happening everywhere. Some people did their mentions before this law was introduced, but now it's the law. So there is also something. I mean, some people are against it. I'm pretty much indifferent because I don't make mentions. So in a way, because they have to make a so-called green roof. It's a law. So they find ways, how to cheapen it out or how to, anyways, do something. You have plenty of that happening. This kind of biology coming into the city. It's quite big, and and it happens first on the roof. Next is going to be happening on the facades, and who knows what's happened inside. You have plenty of space inside in the city. The theory of that, which I think you would be interested, is that there is a lot of synchronous things going on at the same time. There were some, like when Bloomberg was in charge, there were all this, new rezoning. If as you know, New York doesn't have urban planning. It has zoning, so it doesn't have a master. So that the zoning is meant to be something that one can manipulate. It's basically serious. It's an algorithm, in fact. Algorithm before algorithms from the 30s. And so it can be manipulated, so you get this negotiation with the city, and a lot of people are doing that, good and bad. And so that actually makes possible kind of, something that is not possible somewhere else. In a way, like
in both ways, extremes.
Yeah, you get extreme. Yeah, you get really interesting things, and you get also some disasters, and they're synchronous. That term comes from Le Corbusier, by the way, when he was visiting the Middle East and going through Serbia and going down to Greece and to Turkey and beyond. And he noticed that, and he had many followers. He noticed that the city develops as a synchronous being. You have big plans, but you also have small plans, and you have illegal plans. Now, this is not that possible in New York because illegality is heavily being monitored, and but there are always ways to go around it. And architects know that. Architects like Richard Gluckman, for example, he was telling me, he built so many illegal basements, for this, private galleries that are very famous now, and then never reported them. They had a way how to do it, and there is a way how to do it. But it's it's this kind of what I feel it's going on in terms of innovation, as you're asking about that. Innovation materials is really increasing. Again, Mitchell Joachim is working on these biological facades. He has a new project, should be built. He has a client to make a facade that is maintained by butterflies.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, So in a way, like they're working on that. And then big engineering firms like Ove Arup, are usually behind that, because they have their own departments of investigation, and they know that's the future, one of the futures. So it's a little bit, of course, there is always a kind of a break to that kind of work, because a lot of people who are working on this bio design and bio things, they rely on making images which have some kind of a retro quality. So they usually come back to the 50s. So you have these kind of, shapes and renderings and models, that look like California or LA, from that time, 50s, 60s. And they know this is actually retro. They know this is not going to look like this, but they have to use something. So there is also this kind of internal logic in work of innovation. And it has to be represented somehow.
So you mean they're going back to historic designs, and those designs they're also working, they're also good, they're better than the current designs, kind of innovating by going back to something that was before.
That's true. I mean, they use it as a vessel. It's used
a vessel for innovation,
Yeah, like a tool, that they know this is not going to look like that. But there's quite a plenty of people doing it and trying to get into the higher market, trying to get to institutions. Institutions are very interested now. They're very diverse. So that's a state of innovation. I mean, in terms of academic point of view, although universities have been kind of discharging the so-called computational generation, they're sent to the Midwest and back to the Midwest. And so now the new coin word is intelligence. So it's design intelligence. Like, how is design intelligent? How are material intelligent? And how to use various kinds of materials to kind of promote intelligence of a place. And that's happening. That's really interesting. And everybody's now reading, of course, the whole theory about Anthropocene. You mentioned the man-made planet, and also new wave of French philosophers like Alain Badiou, who championed this word. But it's also getting a little bit, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to be next.
Yeah. What, in your opinion, so what is the biggest block? So architecture is part of construction. Yeah. So, and construction industry, and construction industry is extremely influential. It's one of it's maybe one of the most important industries. It makes houses and everywhere. It makes things that protect us, where we can sleep and do work and stuff like that and move around. How important, how effective is architecture as a field inside the construction?
Well, it is very effective. I mean, there are a lot of...
How much is construction controlled by architecture? We can say like
that. It is controlled. I mean, if you're a good architect, you control the structure. You have an engineer. You talk to the general contractor at the very beginning of the process. That's the example of shop, whom I interviewed for you.
Yeah.
They introduce, I mean, what they do, they introduce builder, right, from the very beginning. And they work it out together. And also why they can do it, because of course, you have to pay people around, because they invest. So they're also investors.
Oh, okay.
So there are a lot of new operations, I mean, recent operations that actually use this tool, of self-investing. That's how they get every single actor into the beginning. So yeah, a lot can be changed. And then you have interior design, you have the whole army of decorators and interior designers, which at the end of the day, many New Yorkers actually like the most. They want to have a good chair, or I don't know, wallpaper, or flowers, things like that.
So,
there are people that...
Yeah, I was checking out these facts, and also what Bill Gates said, that like I think every year or every day or something, like some crazy statistics, how much is going to be built in the next 30 years. Like we're going to be like kind of like exponentially increasing building, and more stuff is going to be built in the near future than ever before. So this drastically increasing. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just, there is also other research that I read recently on that topic, just the amount of building that's going to happen, because, there is more automation, there is more efficiency. All these construction companies and investors, everybody's focusing on efficiency of building more faster. And everybody in the world, there is so many people who are living like, I lived in Africa, that 10 people living in 10 square meters, and all of them want now 50 square meters per person, 30 square, they all want to increase. So that's going to just explode.
Here is an issue. Yes, okay.
Building and how much we can control that? How much is that controlled by people like you?
Well, I can definitely write about this. I can point out to that. There is a construction site just across my building, and they were the first to start during the pandemic. And because they're called essential workers. Essential service.
Yeah.
So they're continuing, and people are getting sick, and so that's one of the biggest blocks, that it's really the pandemic. And also, when I go to my supermarket, which is also around the corner, I pass by like 30 people without protection, and with kids, and I don't say anything.
I meant block in the sense how much if you have a great idea, for example, artificial climate, or Mikael has an idea, or Shop has an idea. How is that idea that is proven to be correct, that is going to be beneficial for everybody? How much is that idea put into like this enormous amount of construction all around Africa, Asia, Europe, everywhere, and what is blocking,
That's a crucial question, an urgent question. To follow good examples, like, again, introducing everybody, even the, HVAC experts, from the very beginning, you can innovate a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like, I have a window air conditioning simply because it was here before I came.
Yeah.
But, you can do it in a much better way. And there are people who can do it really well.
Yeah.
It's just the way of will and the way of, ambition and innovation. So it can be done. It's not that it cannot be done. Not everybody can afford it.
But I'm imagining that, I'm in software business, and there the latest knowledge is propagated super fast, because still on internet and software, there is not so much regulation. People are very connected, they communicate a lot. There is enormous amount of discussion and knowledge transfer. But in construction, it seems that the top people who know the good stuff, that is like, and I talked to someone like not far away from them doing like a huge project. They have no idea about the top people and the ideas. They have no idea. And even if they knew, they would they don't consider it as a huge authority, and I'm imagining that the top people like you who have good ideas, you're constantly like having a facepalm moment, like, what are these people doing? We figured this out 20 years ago, and they're still doing it the wrong way, which is a bad way.
Yeah, that's true, because all this, most of the commercial construction relies on, it's basically a facade and a structural system. And of course, the core, the elevators.
Yeah.
And then, then they figure out, how to cool it or not cool it, or heat it or not heat it. So it's very basic, turned to very, very basic terms. That's why many of them are very confectional. I'm looking these guys on the construction site. What are they doing? It's like doing the most basic things on a large scale.
Yeah.
So
I've been in Florida Sorry. Yeah, I've been in Florida before the pandemic, and they're just like, I don't know what they're doing there. They're like building enormous amount of like these wooden houses, like like super fast, and immediately the roads, immediately a hospital, so it's closed, immediately school. It all looks like it looks like ancient, like 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Like there is an idea, as you said, like they're copying something from the past. It looks very, very old. Either it's kind of like a postmodernism plus brutalism for big stuff, institutional stuff like school and hospital.
Yeah.
And the houses look like romantic wooden little houses, which make no sense whatsoever. I mean, why do you even have a roof in Florida? I mean, it's not, I don't know. So, and they're all wooden. I mean, they have like enormously strong winds. The winds are going to go by and destroy. So
I mean, that's true. You are completely right. You know,
it makes zero sense to have this, and it's enormous. They're like, I read somewhere 500,000 homes are built in America every year. Every year, and I don't think any of those people heard of what Rem Koolhaas or Chris Sharples or any of these people. They don't know. They don't even know.
Well, Koolhaas doesn't have a building in New York. You know, he has one interior for a theater.
Yeah.
But he tried so much, but you know, they have an office here, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't have commissions in the city, and so what I wanted to say is that I mean, architecture potential is exactly in innovation. You know, like, and it's not an individual architect is not in the center anymore. Maybe it was in modernism. You know, like you have these legends.
Yeah.
But you know, today is like a circle of people. I mean, it's
like Brasilia. I mean, one guy designed the whole city. I've been in the cities in Belgium and France where there was one architect designing everything from a doorknob to streets to urban, everything one person designed, and that was an architect.
Right. It was actually two. It was actually two of them.
Yeah. No, I've been. There is also like I think Louvain-la-Neuve in Belgium is very much. I mean, eventually changed. There was more people, add-ons, but the core idea is there.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw like a wave city close to Marseille. I've been in that place. I forgot the name.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Amazing. Yeah.
Like crazy stuff, and I don't see that anymore. I mean, there is like architects are very operational now. You know.
Well, they're part of service. You know, most of them. You know, that's why I'm looking into research architecture, because I'm sure there is more than that, and there's much more knowledge than simply functioning as a service.
Yeah.
But it's increasingly getting higher and higher, and you see what's happening. You know, like you have. I mean, as I said, maybe I said it, maybe I didn't. It's the age of distinction. So, meaning, that everything has to be distinct from each other.
Yeah.
I call it also balkanization.
Yeah.
Is it positive or negative? I do not know. But if you look at the skyline, say, of Brooklyn now, which is totally exploding, every single structure is different. Unless the ones that you don't see, which are like row houses, which are mostly interior based.
Yeah.
And, following the principle of the legal exterior. So that is definitely happening. Now, if that's, and there is a lot of traditional houses, that's also booming. Yeah. So whether how long this is going to take, I do not know,
So have architects...
I can guess, I can speculate, like it's surely going to come to some kind of balance.
Have architects became more marginal in construction in the last since modernism, as you said?
I don't think they're marginal. I think they're really, as I said, they're part of the circle. Somebody has to make the drawings.
Yeah, but did they make? I mean, are they operational in that? How much say? As we said, in modernism, there were these architects that had much more power.
Because they have licenses. Architect needs to get a license, and then it's only the architect who can write on the drawing. For example, you make a drawing that looks like a construction drawing, but then you have a stamp, right, which says not for construction.
Mm-hmm.
And that drives investors crazy.
Yeah.
Then they start calling, and how is it not for construction, and la 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 la. Because the law, there is a rule of law, and there are people who implement it. Of course, there is a lot of corruption. That's true, or kind of bending the things and here and there. But that's just the nature of the beast at the moment. Yeah, architects can do a lot.
They can do, but they don't. Meaning, how much in the next 10 years architects are going to reduce the CO2 emissions, for example, which is the
well, let me give you speculation. I think this trend may slow down, especially now that what is it, 1.4 million are unemployed. Pandemic and the whole political spectrum, and that might change. We have elections in November. That is going to definitely influence. Maybe it's going to bring old players back, like Bloomberg and people who do that through the academy. Now, people I know from academy, many of them have this idealistic utopias. I mean, I say utopias not to criticize them, I just say, look, they're just not realistic. They're calling for like a common code, like the green roof. Now everybody has the green roof, and or I don't know, or like I even want to get into the code of building, in a way like socialism did. There was a way to do things. So that may happen, and I'm sure, the investors are going to adapt to it. Let's figure out a way. And, so that's going to be probably the next stage, some kind of, it's not normalization, it is more like kind of taming down the expression effect of architecture towards the functional effect. Because people need to live somewhere. I mean, you have like a third point, you just make this point, and you have like more and more homeless coming back to the city. I mean, I have a homeless sleeping. There was somebody sleeping in my staircase. I was helped by my doorman, and so lost an apartment, lost a place to live.
But just to return to the main thing, maybe I'm not making a clear point. So I'm interested on the whole global scale, the relationship between all the architects and all the construction, with examples of, for example, how much, Bjarke Ingels is focusing on this, on sustainability and green, and how much does that affect like thousands and thousands of construction projects around the world? I mean, my impression is none. I think Ingels, big makes this building, and then after that, there is no boom in sales of green roofs. There is nothing. There is no change. There is a law in New York for green roofs. Again, there is no. I mean, we would see the boom in sales of green roofs and such products. There is, there is no effect. I mean, I was expecting like 10 times more sales. There is no phone calls, nothing. Realistically, and you go with a satellite and you check what's going on, and the construction looks like, as you said, like 50 years ago. And,
as you know, you're dealing with high capitalism, and the returns are more important than anything. Many just don't even.
Yeah, but capitalism is there to satisfy the customer, and customers are aware that, or maybe they're not educated. I don't know. I mean, architects can educate. I mean, everybody's hearing these things. Everybody sees how beautiful the work of for example, Big is, with that energy company having a skiing slope and a hiking, trail up,
Well, how to say, one has to have a, heart, what is it called? Thick skin, right?
Yeah.
In this market. And there is a lot. I mean, like say Herzog and Demeron architects, they managed to make 3 buildings in New York, and all the academics detest it because they know how to work with greedy investor, and they turn it their way. So that they have that tool, and so many do too. Like Shop does too. They have thick skin, and then you have these real estate consultants who are probably running most of the city in terms of rezoning and advising. Then you have the opposition. Then you have protests.
Yeah.
I mean, three towers where I lived before at the Lower East Side were stopped because of protests.
Wow. Yeah.
Lawsuits.
That's very effective.
Yeah, they're very effective, very connected.
Yeah.
So the system is working. It just needs to be engaged.
Yeah.
But the system goes both ways.
Yeah. So bike lanes, in your opinion, are the most recent big change, very obvious change, innovation, positive change in the city of New York in terms of urbanism, architecture.
Yeah. I'm convinced about that. It's going that way.
Yeah.
But
bike lanes aren't new. I mean, Amsterdam and Copenhagen had that like I don't know, centuries ago. It's not. What is the example of really like? So I would say that just city of New York is being very late with something that makes sense because it's a flat. Manhattan is flat. You're talking about Manhattan. And it's not.
You're right.
Yeah.
New York City is always.
Sorry.
New York City is always late.
Yeah. So what is that? Well, in that case, yeah. But what is the example of some like a new change, like really new, like innovation? Because I see that as adoption, of late adoption of innovation. What is the example of really like innovation in construction industry, and how it happened?
Well, now there is this new. I don't think it is written in law, but it's kind of unwritten maybe. Is that there is a lot of conversion of empty factories, especially in Brooklyn. There are many of them also in Upper Manhattan, not to mention Bronx. And then there is a new stipulation that once you kind of do a conversion, you have to provide for landscape architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, green roofs, right? Who is going to go to the roof? It's basically, providing space, public space, and it has to be public. So, in the 90s, the big change is that legally, the city moved from allowing for so-called POPs, which is called privately owned public space, in banks, and which close at 11 o'clock, so they're not public.
Yeah.
Yeah, the current president even has it on 20th floor, like a public space. You cannot even enter the door.
Yeah.
So I think that they're getting done with that, and so the open pub parks. I mean, let's take the example of Hudson Yards, which $58 billion was invested.
Yeah. Do you like it? Do you like Hudson Yards?
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm indifferent. There's some interesting things, but the whole thing is that it became a shopping mall.
Yeah, being indifferent is even worse than not liking it.
Maybe it's worse. Maybe much better. I mean,
I didn't want to go. I was in New York. I didn't want to go.
I can see it from my window, so I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
I pay attention to where I am. So so that's happening, and big players are involved, and you have this kind of at the end of the High Line, you have this kind of new skyscraper city, all glass, triple glass or double glass, depends, how they do it. That's where engineering comes in, and but you still have this park, that you can walk through. So that's a difference, and so it looks a little bit like a town in Midwest rather than in New York, and so I mean that's new thing. Now they're making a new one. They're planning a new one in what is it, in Brooklyn? Yeah, it's in a way it is kind of unstoppable. It's an investment.
Okay.
So and then to come back, why I'm indifferent. I don't want to get angry, or something like that. I don't have time for that. Yeah, there are some nice features. They're okay. I mean, I know you have to pay if you want to go on a balcony on, what is it, 75th floor. I'm just looking at it right now.
You can count floors so fast with your eye.
Yeah. It's not that difficult.
Yeah. Ah, okay. It's like a Rain Man of floors.
Pay like $25 or $30, to do it, and I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I don't need it.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So.
But some people do, Some people do. What can you do?
So overall, you're positive about architecture producing new ideas that make the world better and propagating them through construction.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm also teaching.
You believe in architecture being in control and delivering positive control over construction and investment globally.
Yeah, you can call it control. Yeah, yes, I do believe in that, and I know so many people who do that. And control doesn't mean being like a tyrant. It's basically just giving good ideas. And,
meaning that they are the force for good and real power, meaning having ability to change things, to influence things.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So just the last question before we. So how do you see architecture, cities, homes, everything, like let's say 50 or 100 years from now? What's your vision?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah, well, it's the fun one.
Now, first of all, first is technological. Okay, then there is ideological. Technological, how the cities are going to be built. Now, there are two answers, immediate. They will continue to build traditionally, like as they have been almost for a long time. And then the second one is that you will have a, computation back, because now computation is sort of adapted into, say the builders today, they receive 3D models and they build out of them. So you don't have to make, say, flat models and like plans, sections. You just deliver a 3D model, and then there is all this software floating around. So that could be the second thing. But the thing is, the great risk is that how traditional they're going to remain. Because that's what a builder does. He wants to cut costs. And there's no theory there. There is theory or thinking, when you involve somebody really strong or somebody academic. And that's a very small fraction of the actual production. But in 100 years, well, I wouldn't even be able to say in 50 years, but 100 years, I'll be dead.
Yeah. Yeah, but so, the cities are going to be still, there.
Yeah.
So how do you imagine a new building, in a city 100 years from now?
Exactly as I said, I think the traditional way will continue. You will have poor concrete or I don't know, steel in some countries, and you will have people doing it, and the second way, or maybe some. Okay. Here is my speculation. Maybe some art will come into the actual composition. But I mean, art is artists acting as architects. That has happened in the 60s and 70s. And then you have a new phenomenon, which my friend Nina Rappaport, an art historian, wrote a book about a vertical urban factory. So the production is coming back into the city, but not in ways as kind of big factories, like many cities have, and like Rotterdam, or socialist cities, even New York. It's coming back in kind of smaller, floor by floor. What Japanese do already. They're doing it for like more than 30 years.
Yeah.
So every floor is different.
Is it true that in Japan they recycle all the concrete, like 90% of concrete? Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're totally ahead.
Yeah.
They do it so well. Also, there is an issue of, and this is also, if you ask for 100 years, the issue of so-called tolerance, meaning building tolerance. New York is quite notorious about that. Tolerance usually 2 to 3 inches, which is 5 centimeters. So you have all these gaps in between components, right? In Japan, it's 0.
Okay.
So, yeah, but they do it here also because they cut costs. And again, you know, how to say, you know, that may happen too, that the city may deteriorate, go dystopian. There are a lot of visions now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. That it can get worse, not better.
That's correct. Yeah. Worse
Yeah,
in some way, you know, but better for somebody. Inequality is huge, and it's getting bigger.
Yeah, I like that there is a siren as you're talking about this topic. It's
So
like
you can
very.
say it's New York.
Like I couldn't ask. Yeah, I couldn't ask for a better sound effect.
I know. I have a fire station just down the street and the hospital, large hospital. So it's constant.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. A dystopian kind of moment, you know, may come as a retro from the 70s, because 70s are famous for dystopian visions. And how much this is going to influence, well, I don't know. I think it will influence for sure.
Okay.
By dystopian, I don't think just negative. You know, people can live. To go back to Kolkhoz, you know, as he says always, and he gets always smashed over this. You know, people can live in most terrible conditions, and they do. They do today. Look at camps. You know, look at streets. You know, they're kind of, you know, there is a word, you know, which escapes me now, but you know, people can do it.
Yeah. I mean, I lived in South Africa, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's that may happen too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, and also like, how is the politics going to influence the whole thing? You know, everybody's waiting for a big change in New York, but it doesn't happen.
Politicians always like to ride the wave of change, but they don't.
Yeah, exactly. You know that very well.
Yeah.
So then, you know, you have lots of other issues. And we have actually one thing that is happening that is interesting, maybe for you or for anybody watching this, is the projects. The projects are the social housing buildings, usually funded by the city or by some outside investor, designed with actually very good plans. They always try to innovate. I mean, they tried it in the 70s, that didn't work, like to add terraces, which nobody actually uses. So then they stopped making terraces, no balconies. And, but now they're becoming to be, how to say, cooperatives. So there is this new model, you know, that this most notorious project where you would never put your head in. You know, have a fence around the fence, there is a security, you know, and then you have this kind of young, you know, millennials moving in, soon Generation X. So that's also changing, that landscape. You know, it's a kind of,
they're kind of repurposing, reusing, you know, something that was one thing they're making into something, you know, better.
Yeah, so that may be the trend that looks now, and in 100 years, you know, that trend may increase.
Okay, that's interesting. So instead of building, they're going to be reusing.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, malls. Yeah. I think there is a lot of empty malls. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. There are some ideas about that, but I haven't seen anything working so far.
Okay. Well, do you have any questions for me?
How are you doing?
Somebody asked me seriously. I'm fine. Yeah. Trying to lose weight.
How is business?
It's okay. Yeah.
All right.
Nothing special. Fun, but nothing special. We're launching a social media for innovation in a week or two, if everything goes well. So I'll be waiting for that for a while. So I'll let you know when that's up. So that's a big thing.
I'll let you know of my other new ideas.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Nicola. Take care.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.